Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm back from a short vacation, meaning that I'm once again writing and filming reviews for you guys, and I decided to start with something which I believe is great sounding, with the Denafrips Venus 15th R2R DAC, which is twice the size compared to the very first generation Venus that I tried some 5 years ago or so. It's twice as heavy as well, and it actually uses the same case and the same dimensions with their top-of-the-line Terminator and Terminator Plus. The unusual part was seeing its price of $3,999 or euros, which is a bit lower considering its 19 kilo body weight. I'll be comparing this one with the LAiV Harmony DAC in a few minutes, so please stay a while and listen, and let's go ahead with this review. First things first, the sheer size of this unit will be dwarfing not only lots of DACs, but quite probably even a few integrated and power amplifiers. It's really large. It's basically on the same level with my ROCNA reference signature, but it's much heavier, actually 2 times as heavy, which is a little bit unusual. This is definitely the definition of massive overkill and oversized, but these are the most important ingredients for a hi-fi sound without major compromises. As you can see, it's carved from thick aluminum plates on CNC machines, and it looks like a huge aluminum brick. Hiding all the screws on the back for a clean and minimalist look is a standard procedure nowadays, and its low-intensity LEDs offer just the right brightness in a dark environment. The flash buttons provide a satisfying click, I believe, and they feel securely attached with no wobbling. It consumes only 20 watts, which means that heat dissipation won't be an issue, unlike many other units that I've encountered before. As for controls from left to right, you'll find the input selectors, mute, on-off, non-oversampling/oversampling button, phase and mode button. On its back, all possible digital inputs are present, such as USB, coaxial, optical, 2 AAC inputs, 3 I2S inputs via HDMI and Ethernet, and 2 BNC clock inputs, just in case a Denafrips Gaia DDC will hop on your shopping list. On the analog side, you have your usual RCA and XLR outputs that are providing a fixed voltage output of 2.2 volts and 4.4 volts respectively. In an R2R DAC, the signal is being converted by the help of tens of resistors that can form a ladder, 2 or even 4 ladders. But in this case we have 4 ladders, meaning that this one is a quad mono design or a fully balanced unit from input to output. The output stage is made only from discrete components, and again we have 4 mini amplifiers, meaning again that this is a fully balanced unit. I forgot to mention that the precision of these resistors that are forming these 4 ladders are very important, and from thousands of resistors or hundreds of thousands, I don't know, that Denafrips is acquiring, only the very best measuring 0.005% precision are going into their Terminator, Venus on Ponto series, and everything else goes into their Aries. So we have the best resistors in the Venus 15th as well. The second most important thing I believe in DAC design is actually the clocking system, and we have an oven-controlled crystal oscillator, actually 2 pieces, and those are very expensive, and those can usually be found in very expensive DACs, and that makes me very happy because Terminator Plus also has these clocks as well. Last but not least, we're dealing with a state-of-the-art power supply implementation with an impressive regulation and filtering stage as well. Unfortunately, I couldn't feel that part because all of that is located on the lower part of the unit, just below the main board, so I couldn't have a peek inside, but I know that 2 single crystal copper linear transformers are located in there. One is much bigger, it's a 250 watt transformer, much bigger versus an 80 watt transformer found on its predecessor Venus 12 and Venus 3rd generation. So I believe this one should provide some stronger dynamics and a faster transit response as well, but we'll see about that. Okay guys, this is pretty much it, so let's hit some eardrums and let's check it out in both a head-fi setup and in a stereo setup as well. Before you ask, this is my stereo where most of my listening was made for more than a week, and I also tried it in a headphone-based system where I used the Cain Soul 170HA or the Felix Envy Performance Edition headphone amplifiers, driving the HiFiMAN Susvara Unveiled or the T+A Solitaire P, which so far for me are the most resolving and transparent sounding headphones, and the same can be said about the Rado TD 2.2 loudspeakers. My initial sound impressions always highlight the strongest skills that I'm experiencing with the unit I'm reviewing. For example, for the 3rd generation Venus, it was definitely the tone and timbre that impressed me most. With the Gustard R26, it was definitely dynamics and transit response that impressed me most, sounding quite punchy, much more so compared to, you know, say a smaller tapping DAC, for example. But on the Venus 15th is definitely the stereo separation, the soundstage, depth, holography, and all of those 3D effects which seem to be boosted compared to, say, a LAiV harmony DAC. It's much closer to my Rockner reference signature DAC than it is to the LAiV harmony DAC, and that should tell you a lot by how impressive it sounds in the soundstage department, and everything that has to do with stereo separation imaging as well. Putting aside my Rockner reference signature DAC, which is considerably more expensive and so hard to recommend around here because, you know, it costs so much, the biggest sounding DACs that I have experienced at my place were the Denafrips Terminator Plus, the very 1st generation, and also the Venus 15. So yeah, these are basically the 2nd and the 3rd place are definitely occupied by the Venus 15th and by the Terminator Plus. So these should tell you how much these impressed me in this regard. I believe the Venus 15 is also more impressive compared to the Musician Taurus, which I also liked very much in this department. I believe there is quite a difference compared to the LAiV harmony in this department as well, compared to R26 and compared to any Delta Sigma DAC that I have experienced so far. So yeah, the sound staging abilities are very impressive, and surprise, surprise, not only via loudspeakers but also via open back headphones as well. For example, the HiFiMAN Susvara Unveiled are very transparent, very resolving sounding, but I don't find them, you know, huge sounding like T+A Solitaire P, for example. But on the Venus 15th, the HiFiMAN Susvara are pretty much transforming into HE1000 Unveiled when it comes to scale, holography, and depth. Very impressive in this regard. I still have the LAiV harmony DAC around the house, and I really appreciate its smooth and relaxing character and its dense and textured mid-range delivery that is a little bit more impressive than its bass and treble performance. But when closely inspecting and comparing the LAiV with the Venus 15 via the same digital input, which is I2S via an HDMI cable, it becomes apparent that the Venus is much closer to the Rockner. It's considerably bigger sounding compared to the LAiV harmony DAC. In a few words, I would say that the sound is taking flight. It simply roams much wilder in your room, and you know, it soars in all directions, and you don't need floor standing speakers for that to happen. It's undeniably an impressive sounding unit, especially if you care about the depth and the separation of the sound. There's always that extra something with the Venus, an outstanding special cue or a sense of airiness that creates a sensation of being right there with the musicians. And without a doubt, this is the strongest skill that the Venus 15th brings to the table. The second thought that crossed my mind while listening to the Venus 15th was how resolving and the sheer resolution and detail retrieval and transparency of this unit. I remember trying the very first generation Venus 5 years ago or something like that, and I was impressed by its note binding skills, by its tone and timbre, by how everything came together, how natural, how organic everything poured. It was really outstanding, and it was made mostly for music lovers rather than for audiophiles. It was clearly quite musical sounding in a way, but I was not really impressed by its resolving abilities and also by its transit response, because it was a little bit sluggish and slower sounding compared to, say, Delta Sigma DACs. I remember having the Matrix Audio Element X, and that was more resolving, that was faster but not so hard pounding sounding. With the Venus 15th, I hear a massive improvement in terms of resolution, transit response as well, but especially in terms of detail retrieval in the frequency extremes, in the treble and also in the sub bass. This is actually quite a big surprise, because I didn't expect that Denafrips will improve this one so much in this regard. There is a little bit a nicer layering in the bass, and I can hear a higher quality bass compared to, say, the third generation Venus. Of course, I cannot make a comparison, a direct comparison, because I no longer have the Venus, the third generation, but clearly this one is providing me a much better layering in the bass. It's not only hard pounding in the bass, but a very high quality type of bass. Secondly, the upper treble, wow, impressive. It's not just more extended and you can hear additional nuances in here, but the treble is also somehow more real sounding, like it's exactly how it should sound. It's not wrong, or it's just right sounding in the treble. Very clean, sparkly, but without becoming bright or bothersome in long listening sessions. This is where I believe entry to mid-level R2R DACs are not so impressive. So usually you are not buying an R2R DAC to get the last bit of information, all of the information that is hiding behind your tracks. That usually happens with something like a chip-based oversampling DAC. Definitely not on R2R DACs, but with a careful selection of components, with a much better clocking system, with better resistors, so on and so forth, power supply, you can make an R2R DAC transparent and detailed, and I believe that the Venus 15 is definitely part of this group. In the end, I'd say that the Venus 15th is no longer rounding the frequency response like it was the case with the Venus 3rd generation that I tried. So the sound is no longer like like a circle, but it's a straight line in terms of frequency response. You get an amazing sub bass, layering, natural mid-range, and all of the information that you want to hear in the treble. It's all there. And I'd say that it's much closer to my reference DAC in this regard, as it was the first generation. So it's much closer to my Rockna reference signature DAC in this regard. Not really on the same level, but not that far off. There was a difference, of course, with the Rockna, but not as significant as I have imagined. True, the Venus wasn't quite at the same level, but it was certainly a step above the Harmony DAC. The third thing that tingled my senses, and it was more like a question mark hovering all around my head, is how do you make such a transparent and revealing and ultra detailed R2R DAC, but without becoming bright or clinical sounding or aggressive sounding in long listening sessions? This part I don't understand, but I believe this is the special ingredient that Denafrips is not telling us. Yet remarkably, the treble remains pleasantly clean and refined, flowing quite naturally during long listening sessions, even when paired with solid-state electronics and with some of the most revealing loudspeakers that I have encountered. While this is my third revelation, I wouldn't be surprised if this one will be your first revelation, especially if you are coming from entry-level R2R DACs like Denafrips Aries, like Musician Draco, like Musician Pegasus, because the difference in resolution, in transparency and treble extension and definition will be probably quite shocking. These R2R creations perfected a technique that sadly Delta Sigma oversampling DACs are not doing so well, producing sound that is crisp and detailed, all without crossing into harsh territory. And I believe it's a skill that all R2R ladder DACs have today, although some do it better than the others. Last but certainly not least is the way it controls energy levels, especially in the bass. People usually think that that is the sole job of your preamplifier, of your integrated, of your power amplifiers, but think again, this is also the job of your source. Some of them can be loose or, sluggish or slow, and some can be fast, even lightning fast and really tight sounding. For example, the very first generation Denafrips Aries was what I would describe as mellow, slow sounding, not so fast, not so impressive in terms of transients, but the Venus 15th and the Terminator Plus are much more energetic sounding and much tighter sounding as well. In the end, the Venus isn't just delivering some powerful bass notes, but it tightly controls all of that energy, and that will put a huge smile on your bass head phase, because the bass is of a higher quality while maintaining the same slam and impact of the first generation Venus. You'll feel the force behind every bass note, and yes, that is the right word. You'll hear it, but you'll feel it as well in your gut, with your body. And fortunately, the bass doesn't pound your room, it remains well controlled. Generally speaking, R2R ladder DACs shouldn't impress you so much in terms of speed, in terms of how fast they can sound, in terms of transient response. This is where usually Delta Sigma designs will impress you a lot more. For example, as I told you before, my former Matrix Audio Element X was really a lightning fast sounding unit. It was very technical, very resolving, but at the same time it was not pounding so hard. It was more like lightweight sounding. With R2R designs, it's pretty much the other way around. Those are very powerful, punchy, there is so much meat on the bone, but at the same time, I don't find them very technical or super speedy sounding. The first generation Aries lacked both in speed and slam and technicalities. The Venus was clean and resolving and hard pounding, but not so fast, and I believe that Venus 15th finally solved the biggest issue of the first generation, because this time around is simply nimble, light-footed and really fast sounding by comparison. And yes, I can listen even to electronic tunes on the Venus 15, something that I couldn't do so easily on the first generation Venus. And I'm not sure if that newer clocking system, higher performance clocks and a much beefier power supply implementation made it so, but clearly this one is a different beast, and this one has, I believe, much better transient response by comparison. Let's talk a little about the frequency response, and let's start with the bass. First of all, I should mention that it has an overkill power supply implementation, and the output stage also consists of fully discrete components in a four-way design. So this is from where most of that bold energy in the bass, thickness, texture, that impressive punch is coming from. And from the units that I tried at my place, except for my Rockna, then I believe Terminator Plus, together with the Venus 15th, are delivering one of the most impressive bass performances. It's not just of high quality, but it's impressive in terms of quantity as well. And if you consider yourself a bass head, this is a very easy recommendation. And I can't really think of a better remedy for systems that are lacking in terms of bass energy and impact. If you're using bookshelf speakers, a very easy remedy. If you're using open back headphones with not so much impact in the bass, a very easy remedy. And again, it's not really only the job of your amplifier, or of your speakers and headphones, but also of your source as well. This one is adding oomph and transient energy quite a lot in the bass. The number one reason people usually invest in R2R DACs is to get that magical, soothing, dense and rich and full-bodied mid-range, and that is definitely the case with the Denafrips Venus. The only thing I'd say that you shouldn't think about a sweet or milk with honey performance in terms of mid-range delivery, because that is not really the case. It's mostly real sounding, it's not overdoing it like some others are doing, like the Aries, for example. It's not adding lots of sweetness, it's not adding much longer trails, longer decays of the voices, for example. Those are not happening on the Venus 15. This one is mostly real, without, trying it too hard to, over beautify the music that you are listening to. If you tried different DAC designs by now, like single beat DACs, like oversampling DACs, like Delta Sigma DACs, like FPGA DACs, I know such things don't exist. Those are still oversampling DACs with Delta Sigma modulators. Let's go ahead. But you already know that R2R DACs have that special ingredient that makes the mid-range flowing so naturally, very articulate, very palpable, very real sounding. And that is definitely the case with the Venus 15. I can't really pinpoint the reason of why R2R DACs are doing it slightly differently. I believe single beat DACs are very close in this regard, but R2R DACs are still better and are pretty much unbeatable in terms of mid-range delivery, meat on the bone, and richness, and so on. Treble heads should sleep much easier this time around, because finally we have an R2R DAC with a very good extension up top in the treble. The highs are sparkly, there is plenty of nuance, plenty of definition, but surprise, surprise, there is nothing of that listening fatigue. So this one is not bright, it's not clinical, it's not aggressive. You can listen to electronica music, to rock, metal, you name it. This one will be just sparkly, clean, but very easygoing. And I know it's a little bit unusual to say such thing about this one, but it's exactly like that. While obtaining a highly resolving unit that is so extended in the treble, especially when it comes to R2R designs, can dent your wallet pretty hard. I believe that is not really the case with the Venus 15. Yes, it's a little bit more expensive compared to a chip-based solution, but at the same time, it's not really costing you an arm and a leg. And I believe it has the right price for the technical performance you are getting in return. Let's do a short comparison in between the Venus 15 and also the LAiV Harmony DAC, but first of all I want to mention that I will skip their features, their prices, the case differences, the physical differences, because you can check all of that information in my LAiV Harmony DAC review, in my Venus 15 DAC review, in my written reviews as well, so those are not so important. I will just mention that both of these units are 100% custom made, each with a unique DNA from the parent company. The most notable difference lies in the frequency response. And at first I believe that the LAiV Harmony DAC is a little bit more impressive in the mid-range department, because most of your attention goes in there. But after some back and forth comparison, some double blind tests, it was obvious to me that the Venus has pretty much the same traits. So what's the difference then? The bass and the treble. This is where is the big difference. The Venus is providing a higher quantity bass delivery, and the bass quality is also a little bit better, but the quantity of the bass, I believe, is by at least 30% higher. So if your system is bass light, or if you feel that you need a little bit more oomph in the bass with your system, the Venus 15 is definitely adding more oomph, more energy into the bass. It's not really louder, but it's more energetic. It's hard explaining, but it's just pounding a little bit harder. So dynamic range is better on the Venus. The treble is also another difference, and it's not a small difference, unfortunately, because I really like the sound of the LAiV Harmony DAC. The treble is a little bit sparklier on the Venus 15, and there is a little bit more information on the macro scale, micro scale as well, because I can hear some tiny details playing in the background on the Venus, and I can hear them much blurrier on the LAiV Harmony DAC. I'm not sure if those better over control clocks of the Venus is making this difference, but Clearly the Venus 15 is tighter sounding, is better controlling the low end, is better controlling the upper treble, and overall I'd say that I'm getting a better pace, rhythm and timing, and the sound becomes just ever so slightly more real sounding by comparison. It became clear to me that the sound is slightly clearer and more detailed and more transparent on the Venus, and I could easier appreciate all those things playing in the background. As you know, I rarely use some audiophile-proof recordings. I use my own tracks, and what was interesting is that on the LAiV Harmony DAC, those less than perfect recordings didn't sound that great. They sounded a little bit grittier, not so enjoyable. But on the Venus, that was no longer the case. I could enjoy even some bad mastered music pretty easily, and I didn't need to stress myself to simply enjoy the music. It was very obvious from the start. Another striking difference was the overall scale of the music and also the imaging and how easy it is to focus on your music, especially on things playing in the background. And don't get me wrong, the LAiV Harmony DAC is still impressive in this regard, and I remember being impressed by it when it comes to soundstage capabilities, depth, focus, imaging, and I believe it's still better compared to, say, Delta Sigma DACs at around $3,000 US. But the Venus is more impressive in this regard. I just feel that there is more music in this room. Every corner is filled with the music. I feel that there is more music to my peripheral vision, to my left and right, more music up and down, and simply there is more nuances happening from everywhere. And once again, it's easier to focus on the music and all those tiny things happening in the background. Connecting the LAiV UDDC to the LAiV Harmony DAC slightly improved the timing and also the focus and also the outline, the leading edge of the notes, but sadly the soundstage didn't get bigger, and in this regard Venus on its own is simply better. Another striking difference was in terms of dynamics. And this has to do with several things. For example, LAiV Harmony DAC is not providing that amazing oomph and slam in the bass, something that I can easily hear on the Venus 15. So clearly this one is simply providing better dynamics. Everything is a bit more fun, more joyful to listen to, especially if you listen to modern tracks, pop, electronica, rock. Everything feels a little bit juicier and a bit more raw, more impactful, more fun sounding. Wrapping up, let's address the elephant in the room. The Denafrips Venus 15th is just a DAC and nothing more. So forget about a remote control, forget about volume controls, mediocre preamp stages, flashy displays, touch controls, extra features. It doesn't have any of that. At the same time, if you are hunting for a really good DAC and nothing more at this price, it's a very easy recommendation to make because it's close to perfect sounding. This is my honest opinion. The first generation Venus was a very different sounding unit. It was lacking in speed, it was lacking in resolution, it was not the most tight sounding unit, it was not so impressive, honestly. But this is a very different beast. It's 2 times bigger, it's 2 times heavier as well. Luckily, it's not 2 times pricier because from 3,000 it went to 4,000 euros. So the jump in performance is huge, but the jump in price is not so huge, especially if you consider inflation that went up by around 15%. This is no longer that mellow, shy and overly smooth Denafrips sound that I once knew. This version is much more polished, is much more mature and a lot more fun to listen to as well. Alright everyone, that's all for now. If you're interested, a much longer in-depth review for the Venus 15th can be found below, done by yours truly. And I'll see you next week when I'll be trying those super small but cute and quite lively sounding LAiV gun-fed monoblock amplifiers. I'll see you next week. Cheers!